and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. The headlines. Tribunal nullifies election of Adeles of the People's Democratic Party as Osun State Governor, declares Oyetola winner. INEC to conduct mock accreditation exercise across the country on February the 4th. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo deplores the current practice of democracy in the country at the Port Harcourt International Conference. Plus, Rwanda shoots at Democratic Republic of Congo fighter jets in defensive move. And that's News Round in view. Once again, welcome to the program. I'm Anne Nwawadu. News Round begins with the much-anticipated verdict of the Osun State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, which has nullified the election of Mr. Adeles, the People's Democratic Party candidate, as the governor of the state. It directed the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to withdraw the certificate of return issued to Mr. Adeles and return it to Mr. Oyetola of the All Progressives Congress as a validly elected governor of Osun State. In the judgment, the tribunal agreed with the petitioner that overvoting took place in the July 16, 2022 governorship election at many polling units as held by the petitioner. However, in the dissenting judgment, a member of the three-member tribunal cited inconsistencies in submissions surrounding the use of BVAS or its abuse.
It's not the usual court atmosphere here. Heavy presence of security operatives, hundreds of politicians talking in clusters, lawyers settling down inside the tribunal courtroom, everyone waiting to know where the pendulum swings in the petition filed against the winner of the July 2022 election, Mr. Adeles. The three-man tribunal team settles in, and the real judgment, which lasted 3 hours, starts at about 10 minutes past 9 in the morning. The tribunal admits that overvoting took place at certain polling units as held by the petitioner, and this necessitates deductions across both parties. This leaves Mr. Oyetola with 314,931 votes and the PDP candidate, Mr. Adeles, with a drastically reduced votes of 290,266. In the result declared by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, last year, Adeles polled 403,271 votes against 375,27 votes polled by Oyetola. The tribunal consequently directed INEC to withdraw the certificate of return issued to Adeles and return Oyetola as the validly elected governor of Osun State. But in a dissenting judgment, a member of the tribunal cites inconsistencies in submissions surrounding the use of BVAS or its abuse, saying there is paucity of evidence to sustain the petitioner's case, as the BVAS report relied on by the petitioner was not even taken in evidence. He also opposed the position of the tribunal that voter register has no place in the current electoral dispensation, insisting the petitioners could not simply rely on the BVAS back-end server report, which was not perfected at the time it was demanded for. Counsel to the petitioner and the defendant who were present in court give their reactions to that judgment.
It's a very solid, industrious judgment, and they delivered it on time as they promised. This is the first round we have won. It is up to the other side to decide what they want to do, whether they will just accept this now and go home, or they will go upstairs. Whatever the decision, we are there, and God is there.
The two decisions had nothing on the certificate, so he was cleared on the issue of certificate. So it was on the issue of the overvoting which was what the chairman went on and on about. And there are some fundamental issues there which we disagree with. But all this will be well laid out in the appeal.
The tribunal, however, cleared the PDP candidate on the issue of academic credentials and qualification for the election, saying he was eligibly qualified at the time he contested the election. Babajide Agbeyo, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Governor Ademola Adeleke has described the judgment of the governorship tribunal as a miscarriage of justice, vowing to challenge the ruling at the Court of Appeal. Reacting to the tribunal verdicts from his country home in Ede, Governor Adeleke faulted the resolution of the overvoting issue in favor of the former governor Oyetola, calling it an unfair interpretation against the will of majority of voters. While urging his supporters to remain calm, Governor Adeleke vowed to appeal the judgment, insisting he remains the rightful winner of the July 16th election. And still talking elections, ahead of the general elections, which will commence with the presidential and the National Assembly polls on February the 25th, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has slated February the 4th, 2023 for a nationwide mock voter accreditation exercise. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, stated this at a meeting with the resident electoral commissioners in Abuja to fine-tune preparations for the forthcoming elections.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, is attending this meeting with resident electoral commissioners from the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory.
Of the Electoral Institute.
The INEC chairman describes the meeting as crucial, as it will put the finishing touches to the preparations for the 2023 general elections. And issues such as the ongoing collection of permanent voter cards will also be discussed.
The Commission is aware that there are few issues to be addressed. One of them is the ongoing collection of the permanent voters cards, the PVCs. For instance, in Lagos State, which has the highest number of registered voters in the country, as of yesterday, Thursday, 26 January 2023, 839,720 PVCs have been collected, representing 89.3% of the total figure of the new cards. This meeting with REX will consider reports from other states of the Federation, and the Commission will not hesitate to consider additional measures to ensure that all citizens have ample opportunity to collect their PVCs ahead of the general election.
The electoral umpire will also be conducting a nationwide mock voters accreditation exercise to reassure Nigerians on the efficacy of the bimodal voter accreditation machine, which will be deployed for the first time in a general election.
The mock accreditation will hold on Saturday, 4th February 2023, in 436 polling units nationwide. 12 polling units have been designated in each state of the Federation and 4 in the Federal Capital Territory. The Commission appeals to registered voters in the affected polling units to appear on the scheduled dates with their PVCs for the mock exercise. Doing so will help to reassure the public of the robustness of our system and to strengthen our processes ahead of the general election.
It is less than 30 days to the exercise, and the Commission says all preparations, including the movement of electoral materials to locations across the country, training of electoral officers, and the accreditation of election observers, are already in their final stages.
And away from elections to the National Assembly, where the Speaker of the House of Representatives is threatening to compel the appearance of the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, and managing directors of banks who fail before the House of Representatives. The Speaker gave the warning after the CBN and some bank MDs failed to honor the invitation of the House at her committee, which is on a fact-finding mission on the scarcity of the new Naira notes across the country. In the meantime, the House of Representatives is raising concerns over the possible disenfranchisement of Nigerian students who would likely be writing examination during the general elections.
Discussions on the cashless policy.
Following a motion on a matter of urgent public importance on Tuesday, the House of Representatives constituted an ad hoc committee led by the House leader to find out reasons for the shortage of the redesigned Naira notes across the country. The Central Bank of Nigeria and managing directors of Nigerian banks were invited to a meeting on Wednesday, but no official of the CBN honored the invitation, and the meeting was rescheduled to Thursday. Ahead of the meeting during Thursday's plenary, this is how the Speaker reacted.
If by the end of today there is further disregard to the summons of this House, I will not hesitate to issue a warrant to the Inspector General of the Nigerian Police to compel the attendance of the CBN and/or managing directors who fail, refuse, or neglect to respond to the summons by the House of Representatives. The House is also aware that Section 20, subsection 3 of the Central Bank of Nigeria Act mandates the CBN to redeem the face value of the recalled currency upon demand, even after the expiration of the notice of recall.
While plenary continued, the committee members moved to the meeting venue to await representatives of the Central Bank and other Nigerian banks. After 2 hours of waiting, the commercial bank operators were seated, but no representative from the CBN was in sight.
Somewhere, somehow, there is a dark horse behind this agenda, and will not allow a dark horse to continue to drag the success of our electoral process. No one individual can be greater than Nigeria, and nobody can be above the law. So it is the position of the committee that we will recommend to the Speaker to quickly initiate and engage the necessary instrumentality of the law to compel the governor of the central bank to appear before this honorable House for and on behalf of the House of Representatives and on behalf of Nigerian people.
In their submissions, the banks say they are not receiving the new notes as much as the old notes they deposit with the CBN. Back in the chamber, lawmakers argue for and against a bill to regulate donor agencies.
Sometimes the donor agencies that send this money might not really be, not in all cases, in some cases, might not really be for the purpose of development. They can also send this money to promote terrorism, which can further increase the level of insecurity in the country. So that's why it's also good for us to monitor how this money comes in and how it is utilized.
Who are these international donors? USAID, UKID, UNICEF, DFID, United Nations, European Union, OAU, and all whatnot. Is that whom we want to go to control?
Some of the NGOs going to rent a house, a hotel, for 3-4 years, 10 years. What are they telling you? This crisis should not end. We are here. That's the intention. And they will go to places where Nigerian troops and other Nigerians cannot reach. How do they get to that kind of level of arrangement?
The bill eventually scales second reading. Meanwhile, following reports that over 3 million Nigerian students are unlikely to vote in the general elections due to scheduled examinations, the House of Representatives is calling for an adjustment in the examination timetable.
Concerned that these students, who constitute 40.8% of the newly registered voters, have their polling units sited in states outside their campuses, thereby necessitating traveling outside their respective institutions to vote in the 2023 general elections. Further concerned that tertiary institutions are not considering academic breaks for students during the general elections.
Lawmakers are also asking the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure that every registered student gets their PVC. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
When News Round returns, former President Olusegun Obasanjo criticizes the practice of democracy in Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. How to tap full benefits of democracy was the center of discussion at the Port Harcourt International Conference, where former President Olusegun Obasanjo deplored the current practice of the system of government in the country. He, however, listed measures to be taken if the country must get it right going forward. For the host, Governor Nyesom Wike, Nigeria's experience from previous elections should propel the country towards credible polls come 2023. The event witnessed the unveiling of a book, Bridging Rivers, which captures the evolution of infrastructural development in the state and the contribution by the Nyesom Wike-led administration in this regard.
Excellency.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, the immediate past governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, arrives a few minutes past 9 a.m. in the auditorium at the Dr. Obi Wali International Conference Center, where a contingent of other prominent politicians, including former Governor Peter Odili, policymakers, and other personalities, are gathered for the discussions.
Thank you very much, sir.
With the theme, Deepening Democratic Culture and Institutions for Sustainable Development and Security in Nigeria, the conveners hope to collate expert views on how to improve the nation's socio-political system.
It's my great pleasure to be here. We are honored to be partners with the Rivers State government to do this event.
Are we going to continue to manage a democratic system that you could say is essentially illiberal, because while it has the essential democracy, beneath it there are still issues of poverty, the personalization of power, the tendency to contain civil society, to abridge democratic spaces. Are our political parties performing the functions of political parties?
Against the backdrop of a critical political period, the chairman of the event and former governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Fayemi, stresses the need for a decent political atmosphere.
There is much work to be done to ensure that our democracy is anchored and propelled by committed Democrats who ensure that their followers also engage with the civility that is befitting of citizens. Clearly, another type of politics is possible and indeed is desperately needed in our country.
Governor Wike, in his opening remark, warns that if the country fails to get it right in this year's election cycle, it could have dire consequences for the country.
The success or failure of these elections would have substantial implications for the country. Success will add value by consolidating and strengthening the roots of our democracy. A failure may increase political polarization, exacerbate our social fault lines, and set our democracy backwards.
In a keynote address, former President Olusegun Obasanjo decried what he terms the abnormality in the nation's democratic practice.
It is true that a governing and ruling elite that is not firmly anchored in production will not have the urge to invest in research and development, science and technology, and good governance. And such an elite will not have much interest in dominating the local market and penetrating foreign markets to promote accumulation for development and growth.
Moving forward, the former president makes his recommendations to address the prevailing democratic culture in Nigeria.
It begins with self-commitment, then leadership commitment. There are thousands of persons with integrity all over the country and in the diaspora. Leaders need to identify and connect these persons with their communities and organizations to build a true national movement and commitment to democratic practice. Once we commit to opening up democratic spaces, sanctioning breaches, and emphasizing transparency and accountability at all levels, Nigeria will begin the cultivation of a new democratic culture that will spread to all nooks and corners of the nation.
The meeting then proceeds into a second segment where a book, Bridging Rivers, published by Julius Berger Nigeria PLC, is unveiled to transfer to posterity the evolution of infrastructure development in River State and the significant contribution by the Nyesom Wike-led administration.
Jointly and collectively, by the grace of God and with the grace of God, unveil this on behalf of all of us here.
The Port Harcourt International Conference continues for a second day with roundtable discussions on several issues of national concern.
An estimated $6.6 billion was lost during the 2022 flooding in Nigeria, and that's according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Mrs. Sadiya Umar Farouk. This estimate, according to her, includes damages to residential and non-residential buildings, infrastructure, productive sectors and farmland. She was speaking at the presentation of the assessment report of the 2022 flood situation in Nigeria.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development is here with the management of the ministry to give a report of the 2022 perennial flood in most states of the country, which claimed lives and properties, the worst in the country since 2012. The worst affected states are Kogi, Bayelsa, Jigawa, Rivers, Taraba, Cross River and Delta states, with well over 650,000 hectares of crops reportedly damaged.
This analysis estimates that the total direct economic damages based on currently reported statistics of the November 25th are in the range of 3.79 billion USD to 9.12 billion USD. With the best median estimate at 6.68 billion USD. This includes damages to residential and non-residential buildings, including building contents, as well as damages to infrastructure, productive sectors, and to croplands.
The flood started in May and caused the death of 603 persons, while over 1.4 million people were displaced and over 2,400 persons injured across 33 states. According to the ministry, there was significant damage to infrastructure worth about $1.23 billion.
There is significant damage to infrastructure, including roads, irrigation and river infrastructures, as well as wash and electricity infrastructure, with around 1.23 billion USD, approximately 0.59 to 1.724 billion USD damage expected.
The ministry has received approval from the President for emergency intervention and livelihood programs for those affected by the disaster. However, the government is planning to use the findings of the report to rehabilitate victims of the 2022 flood.
Finally, on News Round, the Rwandan government says defensive measures were taken on a Democratic Republic of Congo fighter jet, which it says violated its airspace. Eyewitness footage shows a military plane being shot at while flying at a low altitude between the towns of Goma and DR Congo and Gisenyi in Rwanda. In a statement, DRC's Information Ministry condemned the incident and denied that its jets had flown over Rwandan airspace. Rwanda, on the other hand, say this was a third incident involving a Congolese fighter jet in its airspace and asked its neighbor to stop the aggression. The DR Congo accuses Rwanda of supporting M23 rebels, which Kigali authorities have consistently denied. And that's News Round for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu.